One of the things we try to be mindful of in the city of St. Paul is that historic preservation is a planning function and an economic development driver, which is why we try and intentionally respect both of these aspects, which is why the HPC staff and our planning and economic development department work as such close partners. And as a segue to that, as you might imagine, events like this do not happen on their own, and someone has to take ownership for their importance. And we are lucky in the city of St. Paul to have some really dedicated staff who put, those of you who know, put their hearts and souls into their job. It isn't just about the paycheck. You cannot fake the dedication that we have from both Amy Spong and Christine Boulware. So I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to them as well. So we'll stand up. And I suppose Amy can stand up. Like, who here doesn't know Amy, but there she is. So it's really important that we take time to thank them. I would also like at this time to invite Megan Kell-Cornell, who is the president of the St. Paul chapter of the American Institute of Architects, and Rich Laffin, chair of the St. Paul HPC.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be going before Rich, first of all. I'm Megan Kell-Cornell, president of AIA St. Paul, and thank you for joining us this evening for this really, as you said, Kathy, important event where we can recognize our successful projects that are meaningful and thoughtful and can preserve our buildings for a lot longer. So, and I just want to be here as a representative of our 430 members that we have of AIA St. Paul. Not sure how large or how everyone knows how large AIA St. Paul actually is. And the buildings and healthy planning of beautiful environments are at our core as architects, as you know. And sustaining our building heritage is an extremely important part of encouraging meaningful and healthy city living. In St. Paul, designing for healthy city living is important as we embark on the retrofits of our older buildings, bearing historic significance, and designing to ensure their future by considerately employing energy-efficient practices. Perhaps green building practices within the historic fabric of our city is another category soon to be able to be recognized by HPC. The AIA congratulates the deep dedication of the teams and of the award recipients of tonight, represented here, who have a vision and respect for our city's spatial heritage. Thanks for sharing your passion and your project with all of us.
Yes, good evening. My name is Rich Laffin again, and I'm really pleased to represent the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission this evening, and for three different reasons. The first of those is that I've come to a number of these events over the years, and there's nothing that brings me more pleasure than hearing the backstories, sometimes emotional, sometimes humorous, of people who've received awards, whether they're homeowners or individuals. Two, this gives me the honor of thanking a couple of people who are stepping down from the commission, and we'll come back to that in a moment. They're really good people whom we will miss. And then three, it also gives me a chance to recognize and thank those chairpersons who have come before me, starting with John Manning. John is the one who helped me cut my teeth as your current chair, and I learned from him quite a few things. He's a very gracious, wise, and clear person, and always led firm but fair public hearings, and has also been very good about advocating for preservation issues, catching up with people behind the scenes. I want to conduct a brief experiment with you. First of all, let's see. How many of you, like me, are not originally from Minnesota? Quite a few. I might have guessed that. Yeah, very interesting. I actually came here in 1977, and that, by the way, was the year that the HPC had its first full year. So happy 35th birthday, St. Paul HPC. My wife and I, at that time, were looking for a new house. Let me go back a step and ask you one more thing, if I can. Of those of you who live in St. Paul, how how many of you have perhaps family members or friends in other places who misguidedly think that you actually live in the city of Minneapolis? Happens all the time. I've been to a couple rock and roll concerts where that happens too. They say, "Good evening in Minneapolis," and they're right down the street here at the Civic Center. But I've got an idea on how we can rectify that. And so this is my idea. I was starting to say that when my wife and I were looking for a larger house for our growing family in 1988, we looked in a couple of different cities. And what I was going to say is that what I would like to have each of you do is to think of 3 things that you would collect to promote the city of St. Paul. So the next time you're on a flight, perhaps seated next to somebody who's making a connecting flight through the Twin Cities, or you're in a really remote place like Green Bay, Wisconsin, you can talk to the person next to you and let them all know what a great city St. Paul is. So I would encourage you to form your narrative, have it rehearsed and ready to roll out. So what I was going to say is that when I'm starting to say this for the 3rd time, I guess I'm so excited by the idea. When my wife and I were looking for a house, I can finally say, we learned that the city of St. Paul has schools and neighborhoods that are probably stronger than over in Minneapolis, and that at that time at least, the average cost of a house, excuse me, in St. Paul was about 20% less than a comparable house in Minneapolis. That's my first reason, and I'm rolling out 2 more. The second reason, of course, is that St. Paul is a wonderfully walkable city. I think you'd all agree. Whether you're down along the river, under the trees, looking up at across the river at historic Fort Snelling, or up in some of the more urban parks, historic parks in St. Paul, like Irvine Park, Mears Park, the Western Sculpture Garden, which is quite a treat, or Rice Park, which Mayor Coleman claims was the reason that the Republican National Convention convened here in 2008. I think we'd all agree that there are countless green paths that we can discover. And the third reason I would, on my own personal list, recommend St. Paul to others is that as you think about it, what other city in America has a mayor like Chris Coleman, who back in January strapped on those ice skates and went down the crashed ice course and managed to survive? I remember his wife the next day saying, because I think his son went down too, everyone is alive. Alive is good. And I also recall back when Jesse Ventura was our chief executive that some people had a bumper sticker that said, "My governor can beat up your governor." But I think that Chris Coleman tops that. So I'm running a little bit long. I don't want to go on for too long, but if you followed me this far with this idea of forming a narrative, I would also invite you, based on your own experience, to form a comparable narrative about the value of the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission and about preservation issues in general. And as I say, I'm not going to roll out my ideas, but simply to acknowledge, as Kathy did a moment ago, the great diligence and effort that our 2 staff people, along with their interns, the 2 staff people, Amy and Christine, do for the city of St. Paul. They are great advocates for preservation. If you get them on your team early, this is a plug, they will be tireless advocates for you, helping both with design ideas and in some cases helping to arrange funding for projects that need it. So I'm very excited because in the next couple of years we're going to see some really beautiful projects coming back on board again. Certainly the St. Paul Union Depot and the grand reopening of the Jacob Schmidt Brewery Company campus on West 7th Street. So look for updates, and hopefully you'll all come back again next year. So I've got one other responsibility this evening, and that is going back to my first remarks. There are 2 commissioners who are leaving. In fact, one is leaving imminently. Jennifer Haskamp, who's a urban planning consultant, has just been recruited nationally to take a job in Colorado. So she'll be moving on. That's why she's not here tonight. There's a lot of things to do in the next 3 weeks. She just found out. We will, a week and a half from now, at our next public meeting, get something for her. But if I could have Mark Thomas come to the front for the moment, I'm going to embarrass you. Mark hates this kind of thing, but he does too. Mark has actually become a good friend, somebody I admire very much, who is passionate about preservation issues, lives in a Cass Gilbert house that he's hoping in time to make available to the public as a resource. and thank him for his 5 years on the commission, which goes above and beyond the call of duty. Usually a term is just for 3 years, but he served for 5 and has stepped down. The commission would like to give you this print of St. Paul, Minnesota, before there was the downtown as we know it today. So I'd like to encourage you to applaud Mark for his years of service.
Thank you.
You want to say anything?
Yes, I will. Ever the educator and historian, I'd like to say that this is especially meaningful because this view was taken from Cherokee Park, or not, on the bluff right above the river. That's Harriet Island, and we're right at Ohio Street. Ohio Street was once a stream. But this is the heritage. I mean, this is where Heritage Preservation Commission draws together the threads of landscape, architecture, political, geographical history. And members of the committee know that I often take, I guess, what I'd call poetic license in enlarging the net that we cast in terms of aspiring to historic preservation. But that is what the commission produces, is members who have this wonderful affection for the landscape and the way in which individuals who live in that landscape have created things of lasting value. And that is what we do to try and protect those things that are those manifestations. And I would say one more thing. As a physician, I know that our landscape is a critical element in community public health. And as a member of the HPC, former member, I would say that this organization goes as far as any organization to promote community public health, and I am proud to have been a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
So we will start off the presentation with an Adaptive Reuse Award. This award will be presented by Mark Tandy, board member of the Ramsey Hill Association.
As Kathy said, I'm on the board of directors of the Ramsey Hill Association. My wife and our recent residents, just under 4 years of St. Paul, and personally, we couldn't be happier to be St. Paul residents and living in a historic district. The association was asked to do the presentation of this award, and we're very honored for that opportunity. But let's talk about this little project big project at 333 Maiden Lane. The Hill Historic District is dotted with buildings that represent an earlier time, when people used horses and carriages to get around. The building at 333 Maiden Lane is one of those rare structures that has found new life as a single-family home. Built in 1893 and 1894 as something quite different, a livery building that housed 6 horses, a tack room, and a room for the horsemen. This is a building that was on the road to further deterioration, as evident by the sagging roof lines. Instead, it has been preserved and given a new purpose. There were challenges along the way, and each one was met by a family team. John, Aaron, and Allison Mathern put their skills together and engaged former owner and architect Tom Blank. Together, the building's exterior and its utilitarian character have been maintained. The Hill Historic District has truly been enhanced with this beautiful project. An Adaptive Reuse Award goes to Ms. Erin Mathern in recognition of her courage and commitment in rehabilitating the livery at 333 Maiden Lane into a home while respecting the building's original use and shingle style. Erin? And to Mr. Thomas Blank, in recognition of his contextual design in rehabilitating the livery at 333 Maiden Lane into a wonderful home. And to Ms. Allison Mathern, in recognition of her management and design skills in rehabilitating the livery at 333 Maiden Lane into a home while respecting the building's original use and shingle style. Anyone care to share anything about the project? Come forward, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Erin Mathern, and I'm very honored to accept this award on behalf of my sister Allison Mathern and also on behalf of Tom Blank. Thank you very much to the Heritage Preservation Commission. So I can tell you that we first became acquainted, Allison and I and our dad, John, with 333 Maiden Lane back in what may have been the winter of 2008-2009. It had just come on the market, and given the really exceptional location just about a half a block behind Summit Avenue and in and among some of the most important and historical houses in the whole city, we, of course, were naturally very interested in the building. And so, I mean, almost immediately after seeing it listed for sale, Allison and I hopped in the car and drove to the site. About a year later, in December of 2010, we came to the Heritage Preservation Commission with our plans to adapt this former livery stable into a 4-bedroom house. But I can tell you that after meeting Tom and working with him and sort of having him as the former owner and also the architect for the project, what had been detriments became some of the most wonderful attributes of the project. And it was really his creative architectural vision, his insight into the floor plans, his deep knowledge of this structure and how to fix it and make it better again, that made the project a really excellent project. So many thanks to him, and thanks to my sister Allison, who's the other half of the creative team, and probably thanks most to the Heritage Preservation Commission, because as many of you know, in many locations, this building would have been destroyed decades ago to make way for something that would be clean and new and perfect. But not in St. Paul. The HPC wouldn't allow it, but instead gave us a set of guidelines that we could use to adapt the building, to make it better, to repurpose it, and ultimately to save it. So thank you very much. You stand guard for the history and the architectural integrity of our city. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chris Tolbert, and I represent Ward 3 on the St. Paul City Council. I have the great honor of giving out the Stewardship Award to one of our great neighbors, Macalester College. Macalester College has been welcoming guests to the Alumni House at 1644 Summit Avenue for years. The 1926 Georgian Revival has provided a comfortable setting for events as well as rooms for guests. And before 1984, it had served as a residence for the college's president. But the time had come to give more attention to the house itself. Exterior restoration included window repair and reglazing, roof repair, and the rebuilding of the front stoop. Interior changes included painting, repair of the living room's fireplace, updated mechanicals, and upgrades to the guest room. Macalester has put considerable care into the preserving and maintaining of the Alumni House, which is literally the front door that greets many visitors to the college. The project reflects the institution's commitment not only to the historic architecture of the house itself, but to Summit Avenue and the historic district. This year's Stewardship Award goes to Macalester College in recognition of their commitment in preserving the Alumni House at 1644 Summit Avenue and maintaining the stately Georgian Revival House for visitors around the world. If you want to come up, the representative. And it also goes out to David Hyde Design Studio in recognition of their sensitive design in rehabilitating the Alumni House at 1644 Summit Avenue while respecting the stately Georgian Revival style. And it also goes out to McGough Construction in recognition of their quality craftsmanship, ensuring that the Alumni House at 1644 Summit Avenue remains a stately Georgian Revival house for all its visitors. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. My name's David Wheaton. I'm the college's Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer. I first would like to thank the David Hyde Design Studio and McGuff Construction for working on this project with us. Chris gave you a little bit of the history. It's our former president's house. Now it's perhaps the best kept secret B&B in town. And actually, in the time I've worked at the college, I once went to stay at the house, and we went upstairs and went into the room, and we found 2 single beds. And I thought, this is a B&B. What's this 2 single bed thing? But then I asked around campus, and I realized that in many cases, it's parent and child coming to visit the college, because this is a very common place for visitors to the college, prospective students from around the country. Many of you may know we draw students from all 50 states and about 85 foreign countries. So this is really the front door for them into McAllister. I also would note that about 20% of our students come from Minnesota, 80% come from elsewhere. About 40% of our alumni live in Minnesota, many of them in St. Paul. They don't get very far from the campus in some cases. But as I've thought about this and listened to the comments just this evening, we think of this as the front door to the college for many of those folks. It's their first exposure to McAllister. But it strikes me it's also their first exposure to St. Paul. This is the front door to St. Paul for people from around the country, young people who then land here. We like to think of ourselves as a net importer of talent. And this is their first window into the college and the community and to St. Paul and to Summit Avenue. And many of them find after their time here that they like to stay put and contribute to the community. So we were pleased to really give an update to a building that had really was in need of quite a bit of dressing up. And we think that now it certainly looks like it did in the 20s, and it really is now something I think that reflects for us the quality of what we think we do, but I think it also for those visitors reflects the quality of what the city of St. Paul does and what it's like to live in St. Paul. So thank you very much.
My name is Angela DePaul. I'm a member of the Daytonsville Community Council Board. What a difference one person can make. For the lovely home at 672 Greenbrier Street, Michelle Taylor has had a big impact in just the last 2 years. She has had the home painted beautifully and re-roofed as well. This home was built in 1891 for Otto Mueller, who worked at the Ham's Brewery, and his wife, Marie Ham. Otto left his mark literally in the house, with his initials carved into the newel post in the front entry. The house was designed by Augustus Gager, who also designed the Stutzman building where the Sweet Hollow Cafe is. Thanks to Michelle for her ongoing stewardship of this home and preserving its history. I grew up next door to this house, and I remember when it suffered through a time of neglect. In the 1980s, it was gutted for a remodel that never happened, and it stood vacant for a number of years, during which time some of the stained glass was vanished. And then in around 1990, the Gens family bought it, and taking just a shell, they made it into a functional family house again. And in 2000, Michelle bought the house and has continued to make improvements. Today, with this lovely paint job that highlights its Victorian features, this house is a gem once again, and really shines and contributes to the overall character of the neighborhood. This year's Vote of Confidence Award goes to Michelle Taylor in recognition of her efforts to carefully repair and maintain the Otto and Marie Ham Mueller house at 672 Greenbrier Street.
I'm not intimidated by these old homes. It's all I know. I can tell you how a boiler works, and all of you who have older homes know what it's like. You get to love them, and it's so enriching to have an older home. Anyway, I want to thank Karen for nominating me, Karen DuPaul, and not only for nominating me, but for all the work that you do for the Dayton's Bluff area and for the community and the historic preservation of the area. And thank you to the Historic Preservation Commission also for this great award. It's overwhelming. I feel very honored. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Ireland, and I'm a district court judge here in Ramsey County. But about 4 years ago, I worked at the Housing Preservation Project, and thanks to the leadership of Mayor Coleman and Council President Kathy Lantry, as well as then City Attorney John Choi, they brought the Housing Preservation Project together with the City of St. Paul to address this new thing called the foreclosure crisis. And so it's really an honor and a privilege tonight to congratulate Jane Bowman Holzer with the Cultural Heritage Award. She's the supervising attorney at the Housing Preservation Project. And what she does there is whenever the city needs assistance, whether it's in keeping somebody in their home, which is a form of housing preservation, or when we have our vacant and abandoned houses due to foreclosures, Jane is an expert at negotiating with banks and all the myriad of Wall Street people that are involved. And we don't have enough time to go into all the players that are involved, but Jane can navigate that maze. And because of it, in the words of Council Member Dave Thune, she's never failed us in negotiating transfers and securing signed contracts. And because of her work at the Housing Preservation Project, the HRA now owns 639 Humboldt, 686 Bradley, and 301 Sturgis. And these houses would not have been saved but for her very able assistance. So here's a welcome and a rare piece of good news on the foreclosure front. So this year's Cultural Heritage Award goes to Jane Bowman Holzer.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. When I was told that I was going to get this award, there's really two thoughts that came to mind. And the first thought was just another reminder about how lucky I am that I really love my job. And I love the work that I do, and I feel really honored and privileged to be in the position and to not only help homeowners who are in foreclosure and at risk of losing their homes, but also participate in the projects that were able to recapture these properties for the City of St. Paul so that they could be rehabilitated for the city. And the second thought that came to mind was another reminder that I felt really honored and privileged that Judge Ireland was able to present this for me. He's the one that hired me 4 years ago, and he's also the one that really made me the lawyer that I am today. So it's really great that you were able to present this award for me. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm John Manning. I'm a commissioner on the HPC, and I'm a former chair. So I'm glad to be able to present this evening the award for new construction within a historic district. That this kind of project always takes a lot of work, and it's always a good thing to see them come to completion. So on a site with ties to St. Paul's distant fur trading past, in the heart of Lowertown Historic District, a new building has gone up that deserves our recognition. New construction in a district, as we know, can be challenging on several fronts. The lofts at Farmers Market at Fifth and Wall shows how it can get done well. The 5-story mixed-use building demonstrates how 21st century needs can certainly be met while being sensitive to the context within a historic district through the use of exterior materials, color choices, and design. The building also demonstrates how public art can be successfully integrated in new construction in a historic district, with glass mosaics used on the 2 main facades that recall the site's and Lowertown's historic context. And I just walked by them today and they look beautiful. So, a new construction award goes to several folks. I'll read their names out. To Housing and Redevelopment Authority of the City of St. Paul, in recognition of their vision and commitment to the development of the lofts at Farmers Market to fit seamlessly within the Lowertown Historic District. And to Alatus Partners, LLC, with their consultants Brian Gorecki and David Hunt, in recognition of their work guiding construction of the lofts at Farmers Market to fit seamlessly within the Lower Town Historic District. And to Urban Works Architecture, LLC, in recognition of their sensitive design of the lofts of Farmers Market. And to Shaw Lundquist Associates, in recognition of their quality craftsmanship of the lofts at Farmers Market. And last, to Mosaico Group, in recognition of their design and creation of the public art elements of the lofts at Farmers Market that recall the important historical context. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cecile Bedore. I'm the director of the PED for St. Paul and the executive director of the Housing Redevelopment Authority. And I'm really speaking on behalf of Diane. Diane Nordquist was the project manager in PED, who this was her baby. And I want to assure all of you, we did not go into this going, yay, we get to go be a real estate developer. That was not what we definitely did not want to do. But we had a choice to make of whether or not we fill in the hole and create a new parking lot or really try to make something beautiful happen in Lower Town and really capitalize on the rest of the development that was happening in that area. And I think the reason this is so successful is we put together an incredible development team. Brian Gorecki's work as our owner's rep, together with David Hunt, just did a great job in guiding us in our first foray into that work. Diane, I think, was baptism by fire, had never done this work before, and really put her whole heart and soul in making this project happen. And Shaw Lundquist was a very patient and diligent contractor to make sure that the work was done with a fine touch, so that what we realized there really did complement the Lower Town area. And our architect, I think, did a really great job in ensuring that it did fit in with Lower Town. So I just want to say great job to the team. Thank you.
Hi, I don't just get to be your MC. They actually let me give out some hardware tonight too, so I'm pretty excited about that. So I get to present the category for Organization Community Education to the Como Woodland Outdoor Classroom Project. About 10 years ago, neighbors started turning to a neglected corner of Como Park to start cleaning up an area that had been degraded by vandalism and clogged with buckthorn. Ugh, I hate buckthorn. I represent Highwood, and we hate buckthorn. It's everywhere, and it needs to go. So you have no idea what a thicket that stuff can be. Their dreams of improving this area and restoring some of its features has come to fruition in this last wooded area within the park. This effort has involved many stakeholders, including St. Paul Parks and Rec staff, local teachers, and of course neighbors. A master plan created a framework for how the Como Woodland could be restored, including the restoration of the impressive Joyce Kilmer Memorial Fireplace, which had been built during the Depression. And with the restoration of the fireplace and all of the other efforts that have been underway, the original vision of William Kaufman, St. Paul's superintendent of parks for over 30 years, is reemerging. In 1935, he said, quote, "As years go and this project becomes more firmly established, we will win the thanks and gratitude of all nature lovers." Today, we are thankful to those who had the original vision for this wooded corner of Como Park, and also those who had the vision to see it restored. To the following recipients, the City of St. Paul Department of Parks and Recreation, in recognition of their thoughtful design and management of the Como Outdoor Woodland Classroom Project, especially the restoration of the Joyce Kilmer Memorial Fireplace, and to the Como Woodland Advisory Committee in recognition of their efforts to promote the Como Outdoor Woodland Classroom Project through education, stewardship, and the restoration of the woodland and the Joyce Kilmer Memorial Fireplace, and to A&M Construction, Inc. in recognition of their skillful craftsmanship in restoring the Joyce Kilmer Memorial Fireplace in St. Paul's Como Park.
I have to pay particular attention and thanks to Dan Wallish with A&M Construction for his patience with me. I think he would consider me a slave driver sometimes in the restoration of this project. That we got through it, and how do you look into this dilapidated structure and think this is what has to get done? It just takes digging in and realizing what you have, moving forward step by step, and today, as you look across McMurray Fields and you see this fireplace out on the the landscape in this open area, which will become the gathering area for the Como Woodland Outdoor Classroom, you can clearly see that, I mean, this is the reason why we did the restoration of it, and it's a landmark that I think we'll have a lot more positive memories of Como in that particular area. So once again, I thank you on behalf of the City of St. Paul Parks and Rec.
Well, I'm back again. I have the honor of also presenting the Adaptive Reuse Award. There we go. To the Boy Scout Base Camp. A little bit of background. The United States Department of War built the Fort Snelling Cavalry Drill Hall in 1907, using it as a house for mounted drills for cavalry, infantry, and artillery troops. It has had other uses too, including as a site for boxing matches and ice skating, and a new use has come its way thanks to the most sensitive rehabilitation as a base camp for the Northern Star Council of Boy Scouts. This involves serving as a staging area for outdoor activities for urban youth, including through the use of nearby parks, rivers, and wildlife areas. This adaptive reuse successfully balances restoration and modernization, giving this unique historic structure a new purpose. There is much, much more work to be done around Fort Snelling, with many buildings in serious disrepair. Base Camp's renovation demonstrates just what can be done. So the Adaptive Reuse Award goes to the Northern Star Council, Boy Scouts of America, if they want to come forward, in recognition of their vision and commitment to adaptive reuse of the Fort Snelling Cavalry Drill Hall into the base camp serving urban youth, and to Landscape Research LLC, in recognition of their care in authoring the historic structure report for the Fort Snelling Cavalry Drill Hall, guiding the adaptive reuse for the Northern Star Council Boy Scouts of America, and to LHB Incorporated, in recognition of their thoughtful design for adaptive reuse of the Fort Snelling Cavalry Drill Hall into an urban base camp for the Northern Star Council, and to GE Dunn Construction, in recognition of their skillful craftsmanship in adaptively reusing the Fort Snelling Cavalry Drill Hall into an urban base camp. Let's give them a round of applause.
Well, hello, I'm Jeff Salzbach. I'm with the Boy Scouts Northern Star Council, and thank you very much for this award. We're incredibly proud of Base Camp and what it's become already in just a year for scouting. I have to tell you, though, we didn't start out with a vision to do a adaptive reuse of a historic structure. That wasn't our vision. In fact, we started with a vision that we wanted to serve or impact positively the lives of 100% of the young people in our communities. We said, how do we create a place in our community to gather all the kids together and give them an experience that's a scouting experience? And through that vision that we had as a scouting program, Base Camp became something that was an opportunity for us out there. Along the way, though, I have to tell you that we've become fans of the historic reuse process. I'd have to say words like we love our building, and we love those old windows that were original to 1907, which for us was a real process. Anderson Windows is one of our greatest supporters ever of scouting. And we envisioned that there would be Anderson windows in that building. And it took a long time for us to realize that the old windows that were there were just fine. They needed a little love, a little attention, but they became really, really great functional windows for us. And they're all there today, all the ones that remained at the time that we took the building over. We had a great team, LHB Architects, J.E. Dunn Construction, Landscape Research, and many, many others that made this come together. And I would just tell you that what's happened along the way, 28,000 people experienced Base Camp last year, our first year out there. 6,000 school kids, most of whom aren't in scouting, had a chance to come through there. Many, many Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and other young people. So it's become the community gathering place that we envisioned it would be. And we're just starting. The last thing I would just mention, in 1911, the Boy Scouts had their very first encampment in Minnesota. They just gotten started a year earlier in 1910. Governor Eberhart said, "Come take the trolley out to the Cavalry Drill Hall at Fort Snelling. We'll meet there. We'll hike over the hill to Cold Spring. We'll have our first camp out for the Boy Scouts." How cool is that? Very cool. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Mike Hom. It is my honor to serve you as the Parks and Recreation Director here in the city of St. Paul. And it is a huge part of my life that I am a lifelong resident of this city, and actually I've never left 2 blocks from Como Park Zoo and Conservatory, so that's where I'm from. My congratulations to all of the award winners and participants here today. As the owner of what is an increasingly old home in Como Park, I appreciate what this all means at a very personal level with the blisters on my hands. It is my distinct privilege to recognize the award winner in the Cultural Heritage Award category of the Garden Club of Ramsey County. Clearly, our heritage is more than just the things we build. It's about the community we belong with and the partnerships that emerge along the way. And here's an amazing example of that. After 100 years, the Ramsey County Garden Club and its hundreds of members have left in their wake a greener and more beautiful community. Generations of St. Paulites have benefited from what generations of Garden Club members have done for all of us. In April of 1912, the Garden Club, then known as the Men's Garden Club of Ramsey County, formed with a goal of making St. Paul a garden city, encouraging cultivation of fruit trees, vegetables, and flowers. And in talking with some of the Garden Club members in the reception, I learned that we opened our doors to women in 1930-something, so got along to that then. The club's efforts have continued to include plantings at schools and in other public places, educational settings that are free and open to the public, awarding scholarships and financial support for improving our parks. The club's early advocacy even including making the case for the Como Park Conservatory. It is the perfect time of year to share this award with a group that is as constant and steadfast as spring, returning year after year to brighten and green our city. An organization community award goes to the Garden Club of Ramsey County in recognition of their 100-year commitment of encouraging the cultivation of trees, flowers, fruits, and vegetables in St. Paul and educating its citizens. Please come forward.
So over these 100 years, our current membership is around 200 members. And the original founders, as you saw on the slide presentation, were really the movers and shakers in St. Paul at the time that wanted to make St. Paul the garden center of Minnesota. And so even Louis Hill was an active member in the Garden Club of Ramsey County, and really was a driving force for that garden club to continue, for 100 years. So with a strong constitution that was written, in 1912, our members still are vitalizing, the city of St. Paul, and really affiliated with the Minnesota State Horticulture Society, and teaching our members how to become better gardeners. And I always tell, my wife Lee and I live in Highland Park, and we have a 2/3 of an acre garden in Highland Park, and there was just a nice article in the Highland Villager about the Garden Club of Ramsey County, and there's a picture in there of my wife and myself. I always tell people that we've been out gardening now in our garden since the 19th of March. That's when the heat wave hit, and we're 3 weeks early, and so our garden is prime condition right now. But we spend 7-8 hours a day in the garden every day. It's the health club of that you need to belong to, because I always tell people, the air is a lot better in our health club than in the gym that you may go to. And so I'd like to thank the Preservation Commission for this recognition, and especially Mary Dawn Beeson, another member who is our historian for our centennial year, who's been doing all the research and pulling all the data, from the Ramsey County Historical Society, the Minnesota Historical Society, of our history. So it's a wonderful organization, and anyone can join, even women can join now. So thank you very much.
Good evening. As if right on cue, I got a call from Cecile Bedore about 2 minutes ago, and she said, "Are you close?" Yeah, well, it's been a long ride. But this is really an interesting event, especially as we talk about the old bridge. Kathy's looking at me right now and says, "Okay, what kind of a story is this going to be?" But when we were kids growing up, we grew up on the east side of St. Paul, and I live now about 2 miles from where I grew up. And one of the things that we used to do in the summertime, because we didn't have any money, we're like everybody else over there, you're living from paycheck to paycheck, and Dad is working a couple of jobs to make it work. But in the summertime, the treat is to go out for a ride around Lake Phalen. And that was the deal. You could go out there in your 36 Chev, roll all the windows down, and you get up on the north end of the lake, and you get a nice little breeze that would be going through. And it truly was a wonderful piece of architecture. And then, of course, things changed here several years ago when the Public Works or Parks or somebody decided that there was just too much traffic going around that lake, and now everybody had air conditioning, so you didn't have to drive the lake, and it quieted down a little bit. And then another thing started happening as the people were paddling their canoes. They used to rent canoes at Phalen, which was kind of an interesting deal. And as they would go through the little channel and into Round Lake, and then you could do a little portage and get up into Keller Lake. It's really a neat little trip. Well, then concrete started falling from the bottom of the bridge down there, so it became kind of hazardous. So that got closed to canoe traffic, and there wasn't any traffic over the top of it. And then some other people said, you know what, this is really quite a historic place, and we should really, really do something about it. And Richard Kramer was one of the folks that really started pushing this several years ago. And we talked about it, and I said, "Well, Richard, what do you think? Is there really any possibility of this happening? Does this have any legs at all?" He said, "I don't know, but if we don't get out there, and if we don't ask, and if you don't support it, it's never going to happen." So for whatever we could contribute to it, it took many, many years for it to actually come together. But it did, and as I drove by it the other day and then walked over and took a look at it, it's just an amazing piece of architecture. And the work that was done on it to restore it, but there's another little secret about this whole thing. It never really looked like this, because before, when it was initially built, I think it had some open spaces on the side, and then I think WPA came in and they kind of filled in the sides. So what we've got is a restoration, I think. It's not original. I know that. But I wasn't there when they originally built it, in spite of what my colleagues think. Okay, so back to the script. Historic Landscape Award goes to City of St. Paul Department of Parks and Recreation in recognition of their commitment to rehabilitating the Phalen Park Bridge, ensuring the landmark remains part of St. Paul's cultural landscape for generations. And to the Friends of Lake Phalen Incorporated, in recognition of their advocacy and perseverance in rehabilitating the Phalen Bridge, ensuring the landmark remains part of St. Paul's cultural landscape for generations. There's Kramer, you rascal, you. And to McDonald and Mack Associates in recognition of their condition assessment and respectful design for the Phelan Park Bridge rehabilitation. To Mead and Hunt in recognition of their careful research and design guidance for the Phelan Park Bridge rehabilitation. To Global Specialty Contractors in recognition of their management in guiding the rehabilitation of the historic Phelan Bridge. To Olson and Nesvold Engineers, PSC, in recognition of their evaluation and respectful design solutions in rehabilitating the historic Phelan Bridge. And to TKDA, in recognition of their technical expertise in guiding the rehabilitation of the historic Phelan Park Bridge. And to Braun Intertech in recognition of their technical expertise in guiding the rehabilitation of the historic Phelan Park Bridge. And finally, to American Masonry Restoration in recognition of their skillful craftsmanship in cutting, dressing, and installing the masonry for the historic Phelan Park Bridge. Thank you very much, and congratulations. Okay, Kathy.
We would like to extend an invitation to everyone present to attend the grand rededication of the bridge on Saturday, June 2nd at Phelan Park at 11 a.m. It will be part of this year's Waterfest celebration, and we're expecting to get the mayor in a canoe. So, Dan, you're driving. Let me just tell you how this project started. Is one day a friend of mine said, "What is that orange fence that's keeping canoes going from underneath the bridge?" I don't know. What bridge are you talking about? And, 8 years later and at $1.5 million, the orange fence is gone. And if it lasts another 100 years, we'll have a pretty good return on investment. So thank you all.
Okay, so that's it. And I don't know about the rest of you, but the reason that I come every single year is because this totally motivates me. Doesn't it? I mean, don't you just want to go home and refinish a piece of furniture or something? It's really, really wonderful to see. And as the daughter of a bricklayer, I can tell you that seeing all the work that is done and the craftsmanship that takes to restore these homes is really an incredible tribute to the hard work that goes into all of these projects. So a big congratulations to everyone. And I think the lesson that we all have learned tonight is that all of you have one thing in common, which is clearly you are crazy, because everyone had the same thought, which is, I didn't think I could do it. Everyone told me it couldn't be done. And yet it all comes to fruition tonight. And we all get a chance to say thank you so much for your investment in St. Paul and your commitment. And I think we should tell our cable office that somebody ought to figure out how to take all of this and make the best marketing video for the city of St. Paul ever. So your comments are really, really heartening for those of us who get up and do the work every day of the city, to know that it is supported by the good folks who are in this room. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much.